Donald Trump has defended his decision to share data with Russian diplomats, claiming it was done to boost the fight against terrorism.
As president, I wanted to share with Russia, at an openly scheduled White House meeting, which I have an absolute right to do, facts pertaining to terrorism and airline flight safety. Humanitarian reasons, plus I want Russia to greatly step up their fight against ISIS and terrorism.
That statement comes after the Washington Post reported that Trump gave Islamic State-related classified information to the Russian foreign minister and ambassador. The outlet does not provide a source for the allegations, saying it comes from unnamed current and former US officials. The information reportedly shared by the president is said to be so sensitive that it's not even available to American allies or parts of the US government. The allegations have generated significant criticism in the US media.
Code word means like the vital aspects of the story have to be replaced with other words. You have to say things like the package has been delivered. The squirrel is in the basket. The idiot is in the oval.
The reports out tonight are that it was Trump himself, not his staff, driving this crisis with the odd disclosure of classified material to Russian adversaries.
But two former officials knowledgeable about the situation tell CNN that the main points of the story, first reported by the Washington Post, are true.
RT's Murad Gazdiev discussed the issue in more detail with my colleague Rory Souchet.
Well, scandalous is the word here. A big headline, and it's got to be to attract the clicks, to attract millions of views, which makes the Washington Post, after all, money. But what it is bare bones on, scant on, is details. We don't know who this anonymous source is that alleges that Trump shared classified information with the Russians. We don't know, for example, the details. We know that the meeting was dedicated to combating ISIS mainly, yet we don't know what exactly it is that was given to the Russians by Trump, that was told to the Russians. And there's so many questions and so few answers. Even when the meeting was taking place, the media said that Trump was meeting Russia's top spy, Kislyak, that's the Russian ambassador to the United States.
What about reaction coming out of the White House?
Predictable, as usual. Trump and the mainstream media aren't the best of friends, and here's what the White House had to say.
The story that came out tonight, as reported, is false. At no time were intelligence sources or methods discussed, and the president did not disclose any military operations that were not already publicly known. And I was in the room. It didn't happen.
So, the Washington Post's entire story is their word against Trump's word.
And what about the word of proof or evidence?
Well, that's, that hasn't been in much demand lately. This is an era of allegations and anonymous sources. Proof is secondary now. It isn't, it's no longer primary. This is about alleging and accusing before providing evidence. It's, rumor-based journalism. The Russian interference into the U.S. election, without proof, reported universally across the media. Details of FBI investigations. The Washington Post story about Russian hackers hacking an American power plant turned out to be completely false, yet that was based again on anonymous sources. And, Trump's now saying, come and say this to my face, instead of writing all this nonsense.
They shouldn't be allowed to use sources unless they use somebody's name. Let their name be put out there. A source says that Donald Trump is a horrible, horrible human being. Let him say it to my face.
It's interesting. You can make amendments if your story is found to be false, for example, but it damages trust. For anonymous sources to work, to report stories provided by anonymous sources, you need two things. You need the public's, the audience's trust, and you also need a good track record of these stories being true. Unfortunately, with journalism the way it is now, both of those are lacking. A new poll has come out in the United States that says 6 out of 10 Americans have no trust in the mainstream media. They believe that the mainstream media pumps out fake stories. So certainly for journalism, very worrying statistic.
Political analyst John Bosnich told us the media should not run with a story that has so little evidence behind it.
I don't see a scrap of evidence here, but I do see like a shark tank of media feeding. Donald Trump is the chief executive officer of the United States of America. And as the chief executive officer of the country, he has full legal and constitutional authority to use state secrets in the conduct of diplomacy. Let's not play the game of dividing the so-called mainstream media from its owners. The mainstream media of the United States is owned lock, stock, and barrel by the military-industrial complex. So if you want to call it anything, you can call it the military media. The military makes money by making war. They buy the media to promote war. They use the media to promote propaganda in favor of war. And that's where we get in the mess that we're in today.
Meanwhile, Trump's decision to sack his FBI chief is still being questioned in the media, but polls suggest many American people have a different view. The majority say they approve of the decision or are, as of yet, undecided. Legal and media analyst Lionel explains what he thinks the figures really show.
As the polls indicate, mainstream America, small-town America, the heartland of America, voters, could not care less about James Comey or any of these other names that the mainstream media have propped up. Because there's two different worlds. There is a tremendous disconnect between what the mainstream media think America believes in and what America actually believes in.